The White House feels a little bit rattled after the impeachment inquiry news broke. We know that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says that they're about to look into the Biden crime family, and they're going to look hard, he says. And we have reaction from the White House saying, look, this is ridiculous, okay? There's no evidence at all that Joe Biden was involved in anything. And Karine is saying, it's a fact. Don't you even question us about Joe's involvement. But we've got other questions about this. Is this going to actually help Joe Biden? Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe because we want Joe Biden to be the next candidate. And we also have reaction from Jim Jordan explaining exactly what his take is. Since he's on the Judiciary Committee, he's going to be catching the football from Kevin McCarthy and taking it and running it down the field. But first, Kevin McCarthy had to come out and explain himself a little bit. He came out and we're asking some questions of him because we also have some questions here. Not only is the White House a little bit concerned about this, but some people on the right are asking themselves, is this going to do anything? Is this just smoke and mirrors? Is this just like another version of a letter? And we've read many letters here. And don't get me wrong, I love reading the letters, but we also like some consequence from the letters at some point in time. You know, it's not just reading letters. I mean, we want some consequence of the letters. It's what the letters bring. So the point is, in this inquiry, because this is just Kevin McCarthy who made this announcement, and he's mirroring Nancy Pelosi, as he's going to explain here, is that going to give him any teeth? Or does he need to get the full vote of the full House in order for the subpoenas and the inquiry power to have any consequence? So let's listen in and see what he says about this. He was on C-SPAN explaining the media, the news.
Very quickly, how do you justify this impeachment inquiry without holding a full House vote?
Nancy Pelosi changed the rules and the president, but let's walk through why. And let's walk through what an impeachment inquiry is, okay? An impeachment inquiry is simply empowering the House to a greater level to get the documents they need to answer a question. So what it is how do you answer a question? Now, first of all, what is the question? Well, let's walk through what we know today and why it transferred just in the last little bit. We do know that an FBI informant has alleged to the FBI a number of years ago that the vice president, that there was a bribe and that you wouldn't find the money because of shell companies. We do know now the Biden family created 20 shell companies. We do know now that $20 million went to them. We do know now what President Biden told the American public was not true, that he never talked to his son about his business dealings.
Multiple times.
We
lies,
do know
lies,
now, based upon the testimony by Hunter Biden's business partner, that they were selling a brand.
Devin
that
Hunter.
The vice president would get on phone calls. That
multiple times.
Hunter Biden went on
Speakerphone.
12 trips, international trips, with then vice president.
China.
We do know that he went to meetings, and when he went to these dinners, the son got a new Porsche. He got more than $3 million
Diamonds.
moved and transferred.
Diamonds
We
too.
do know now that when the shell companies got paid, 9 members of the family got paid. We do know now that the government, while it was investigating Hunter Biden, was treated differently, the
Obstruction.
Biden family.
Corruption.
That they let the statute of limitations run out. We do know
Intentionally.
from IRS workers who came forth that's not how the IRS works.
Shapley and
So you
Ziegler.
have all these questions, and to be able to get the answers to those questions, you're going to have to subpoena certain documents. All that impeachment inquiry does is provide Congress the opportunity that if someone fights for we also learned. Let me finish the answer. The other thing we learned just in the last couple of weeks, that Vice President used a pseudonym for emails.
Fake name.
That
Fake emails.
5,400 of those are in the archives.
At PCI.gov.
That President Obama gets to determine whether the House is able to look at those. We do know from seeing one of the emails that the staffer sends an email to Vice President Biden and to Hunter Biden and referring to upcoming conversation with the President of Ukraine. At this time, Hunter Biden is on the board of Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company that Hunter Biden was selling the brand to while he was put on, who Hunter Biden acknowledged he had no experience in energy and why he was only put on there because he was Joe Biden's son. We do know President Biden, in his own words, told the American public that he withheld $1 billion of taxpayer money to Ukraine until they fired the prosecutor. And Hunter Biden's business partner then has now informed us in the last weeks that there was a lot of pressure on them to do something about the prosecutor. We have also learned that a White House staffer to the vice president sent to Hunter Biden's business partner that the vice president has okayed the talking points for Burisma.
He's
So
got a
all
lot of
of
this
these are
memorized.
questions. So
It's pretty
I
good.
ask you as reporters.
Wait, that's pretty good. I mean, he just listed like 10 things off the top of his head right there. I don't know if he's got that written down or whatever, but that's like 3 minutes of him just rattling off evidence of Joe Biden's corruption. And the media's like, but I didn't hear anything though. They're just deluded. They have no idea what he just said to them.
Reporters has gatherers of information. Wouldn't you want to know the answers to these questions? And if you want to,
opinion in 2020 that basically said an inquiry is invalid unless
you also have a court case that going forward with Nadler, when he went forward when they did not have a vote, when they wanted documents, and the judge said, why do you need these documents? He said, we've got an impeachment inquiry. He said, okay, you could have it. So you've got a court case there. Look.
But you told
But are
Breitbart
you
12
guys
days
gonna
ago
be
that you have a vote, so
challenged?
what changed?
You know what's interesting?
All right, so they're asking him questions about the prior impeachment, okay? And the prior impeachment of Donald Trump, when Nancy Pelosi did this thing, when Nancy Pelosi came out and just announced impeachment inquiry, he pounded the table on it. You can't do this. It's totally invalid, right? This is ridiculous. And so he is appearing to be a little bit contradictory here, right? He's like, well, you were mad when Pelosi did this. Pelosi kind of cracked the shell, right? And he said, you can't possibly do this. And she did it anyways. And they did the subpoena thing. And then there's court cases. And this is the case he's talking about. But now that he is doing exactly what Nancy Pelosi did, right? They're all calling him illegitimate. And this has no force because you said it has no force. But he's just turning around and saying, I'm just doing what Nancy Pelosi did, all right? And she made a lot of headway with her own version of an impeachment inquiry.
Interesting to me, you were a reporter for CNN, correct?
Yes.
I just laid out to you a lot of allegations.
Yeah, you did.
Based upon the American
I'm just asking
public.
about your words. Why did you change your words?
Let me answer your question, because I've answered it every single day, and you could answer me every single day. Nancy Pelosi changed the president of this House.
But that was
This
before
doesn't
12 days
preclude from
ago.
Nancy Pelosi changed the president of this House on September 24th. It was withheld and good enough for every single Democrat here. It was good enough for the judge. Why would it have to be different today? What we've learned in the last couple weeks, wouldn't you want to know the answer to? Your whole
No, they
job
don't.
is reporting. You now have an accusation that the
Real quick on this, right? He's right about that. Their job is to investigate this stuff. They're more mad at McCarthy. They're asking McCarthy about these allegations rather than asking about the allegations. Like, what kind of world are you people living in? And just the tone. All of these reporters are just barking at him all the time. You don't get that same type of interface with Democrat politicians, right? They bring out Kirby, they bring out Karine, they ask him pretty nice, polite questions, but it's not this onslaught, like attack vector for just doing the same thing that Pelosi did. It's lunacy.
president took a bribe. You do know from your own reporting, from your own station, that they were selling a brand. You do know from your own reporting from CNN that the president went to and did conference calls, that the president went to lunches and dinners, just the dinners, and Hunter got a new Porsche. He got 3
But I
points.
asked for the vote. I just asked for the vote on the
But
floor.
that's my question to you. Why don't you ask the other questions? Why don't you
I
want
do
to
ask, but I'm
No, you
curious-
don't. You
I'm curious
never
why you
want-
changed your position.
I never changed my position. You
told
don't. You
Breitbart
don't.
12 days ago.
You know what's
that you
interesting to
were
me?
gonna vote.
So you don't care about any of the answers. You
not
are
true. I
very
just wanna
interested in
know
the
what
whole
you would change
process.
your
Yes, I answered your
Speaker
question.
McCarthy, on the timeline, how quickly are you looking for this impeachment inquiry to move? And the White House says that thousands of pages of financial records have already been turned over. So what more do Republicans need to prove and provide hard evidence of any possible wrongdoing?
You used any possible wrongdoing. If you had an FBI informant alleged someone was bribed and they used shell company, how do you prove that? You'd have to get the document. If you have a staffer that worked in the White House saying the president approved Burisma talking point, you have facts there. We don't have any of the credit card statements from all the credit cards from the shell companies. We don't have the president's bank statements. We don't have Hunter Biden's bank statements. Providing information like that would answer the question. All we're looking at in an impeachment inquiry is answering the question.
And then the
Last
timetable,
question.
how quickly are you looking for this impeachment?
I would think the White House would want to answer these questions rather quickly.
Shouldn't
If
they?
someone was accused of a bribe, if someone was accused what they said, I don't know if CNN asked the president the question, why did he tell the American public he's never talked to the Hunter Biden, when now we know that
Multiple
he
times.
had about the business partner.
Never talked to
Why
the
don't
wall.
CNN ask the president when he sat down for that dinner with Hunter Biden and the oligarch's wife from Russia, did he know his son was selling the brand? Did he know the family was going to have a $3.5 million payment the next day? Did he know when he had that dinner with his son who was selling the brand that he was going to get a Porsche? Did he know when his son was sitting on the Burisma board and the staff sent
Trading
an
his
email? Why did you use a different name than your normal name when you were going to talk about work with the president of Ukraine? Would CNN ask the president when he withheld $1 billion to get rid of the prosecutor? Would CNN care about if that was using that to do something for his son, selling a brand using American tax dollars when he knows that he was getting a lot of pressure because he had the talking points? I don't know if CNN would care about that question. So to me, what we would do is as soon as we can get the info, we will.
So shout out to Kev for going out there and talking to the media about that. And they asked questions and he gave them the 10 talking point bullet points. Boom, 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 boom. And still they don't get it. And, you know, I joke here, like they're waiting for literally a Venmo transaction, or they want a bank deposit from Joe Biden or from Hunter Biden to Joe Biden, or a big check that you see on The Price is Right or whatever. But just think about this. I mean, if the Democratic standard was the same standard that we applied to Trump, you'd say the same thing about Trump. You'd say, well, nobody ever saw Trump take a box of documents out of the White House and put them into Mar-a-Lago, right? He never took a box specifically. So all of it is other people who did things. And there's just rumors about what Trump said and all of it. And none of it's evidence, none of it's circumstantial evidence or direct evidence at all, right? If that was the same standard, then Trump would be exonerated all over the place. And so my point here is that they just pick and choose the standards that they want to follow. If it's Trump's prosecution, then everything is innuendo. Everything is direct evidence. Everything is circumstantial evidence. And even so much as a sniff from Trump's office is evidence that he colluded with Putin. And now, right, if it's Biden's case, nothing is close enough. You have to see direct evidence through and through. So it's just a double standard that exists. And Kev is out here showing us that there are a lot of major connections, and the impeachment inquiry is the first step to it. But when we turn over to the White House, we've got Karine. So they brought her out to say, all right, Karine, let's get some answers on this from you. What do you guys say about this now that you're about to be impeached? And let's correct this volume so we don't blow out any eardrums and see what Karine has to say from the White House.
You know, that's what we believe.
So if you don't view it as legitimate, does that mean that the White House doesn't believe it needs to comply with requests that come as a result of this inquiry?
So look, I'm going to let the counsel's office, my colleagues there, speak to this directly as to what, when it comes to cooperating, I'm going to let them speak to that. But I've been very clear. We believe this is certainly not going to speculate on any baseless accusations. Baseless? Right? As we have seen from the Republicans in the House, they could not even support their own vote. They couldn't. Speaker McCarthy could not even get support for this vote. And so I'm going to just leave it there.
Hey, Karine, on impeachment, you just mentioned House Republicans' baseless claims. How confident are you that there will be no evidence that incriminates President Biden and Hunter's business dealings as this goes forward?
So let me just give a little bit of a lay down here, because I think it's important. Any specifics to the inquiry, certainly I want to say this at the top. As I said to Darlene, I'm going to refer you to my colleagues at the counsel's office. But I also want to be clear about a couple of things. You know, I just talked about Bidenomics. I just talked about what the president's going to do tomorrow, really deliver a major speech, something that the American people want to hear about. What are we doing to improve their lives, work on the economy? And these are real issues, real priorities for Americans.
The question was about the impeachment.
And like I said, like lowering costs. But what you see Republicans in Congress, right, they have spent all year investigating the president. That's what they have spent all year doing, and have turned up with no evidence, none, that he did anything wrong. I mean, that is what we've heard over and over again from their almost year-long investigation. And that's because the president didn't do anything wrong.
Okay, so just to be clear, this is what they're going to do, right? We can show them all the evidence in the world. They're not going to care. They are anti-evidence, right? They used to call a bunch of people anti-science until their science kind of had some problems with being scientific. And so they called everybody anti-science, but they are anti-evidence now because they just can't see any evidence. There's a ton of it in front of their faces, but they just do whatever they want. And this is kind of how they exist in general. You've got Mayorkas who says, no, the border's great. Border's incredible. What are you talking about? It's working perfectly well. You have them saying, no, inflation's incredible. What are you talking about? Inflation's perfect. It's going down every month. It's not. They say wages are rising. Real wages are rising. It's not. They're all delusional because we need to, and they're not going to be able to do that. So it's the same story here. They're just going to wake up every morning and probably tell themselves in the mirror, there's no Biden evidence. There's no Biden evidence. Karine, you're a great person. You're doing a great job. There's no Biden evidence.
Even House Republicans have said the evidence does not exist. House Republicans have said that. To my friend in the back who just yelled at, which is incredibly inappropriate, but
Shout out to that guy. I think she's talking about Ken Buck. One House Republican or two House Republicans. There's a huge swath of other House Republicans who say there's mounds of evidence.
House Republicans have said it doesn't exist. Their own investigation have actually debunked their ridiculous attacks.
Really?
And the only reason Speaker McCarthy is doing this political stunt, and we have seen it, you all have reported, is because Majority Taylor Greene has said she threatened to shut down the government. Can you imagine shutting down the government over a political stunt? And we're talking about vital programs that American families need.
Let's do it.
And she said that because she wanted him to actually do this. And if he didn't, she would shut down the government. And you have Matt Gaetz as well, threatened to oust him as Speaker if he didn't do it. So he didn't even put up for a vote, as you all know. Because
sounds good, Karine. Yeah, it sounds good. Shut down the government and throw Kevin McCarthy out. Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, that's called politics. So you can see here, they're not going to be answering much. They're just going to say there is no evidence. Now, this is just a wild ride that we've been on because we've been following all these permutations and iterations and evolutions of their narrative here for quite some time now. It started out, Biden never talked to his son about his business dealings, or he never was involved in it. He never talked to him, then he wasn't involved, and then he never talked to his son, but then he never talked to his son about the business dealings, and then, okay, maybe he did talk to him about the business dealings, but he never was involved in them. Then, okay, maybe he did have dinner with them and phone calls and speaker phones, but he never was paid by them. And then, okay, right, the list just goes on and on and on. And so now they've gone all the way back, I think, full circle, and they're just saying it's just no evidence. There's just no evidence. Just say that over and over and over again. And when this person in the media asks her a question about this, man, Karine gets really fired up about it. Here.
You've suggested that there's no evidence to back up the Republicans'
which is true.
Here.
It's true.
I'm not suggesting it. That's actually a fact.
Oh, man. I sensed some attitude right there. Did you hear that attitude? Look at that head bob. I mean, she's like really like offended by this. It is a fact. Look.
You've suggested that there's no evidence to back up the Republicans'
which is true.
Here.
It's true.
I'm not suggesting it. That's actually a fact.
Oh, man. She is just doing the it's a fact, Jack, is what she's saying now. And that's an interesting little answer from the White House press secretary. And then when the media asks her one final question, she just makes a beeline and runs out of there.
And with that, folks,
explain why the president interacted with so many of his son's foreign business associates. More than half of voters told CNN they believe the president was involved and he lied. You can't have a response to that, Karine.
Bye. And look at all these other journos looking back at this guy yelling at her from the background. She turns her head. She turns her head over here. She turns her head. 1, 2, 3, all turning her head at the guy saying, hey, can you please talk about your corrupt boss? We've got some questions about it. So White House, a little bit nervous about it. And you can see Karine, sometimes she can keep her composure a little bit better than that. But today she had some little attitude in those responses. But the big question, is this going to help or hurt Joe Biden? Hard to say. I think that in some instances it will hurt him. In some instances it will help him. What is the net effect of it? Don't know. But the Democrats are saying this might actually help Joe. And some part of me thinks that this is actually better for the right. I have this fear, maybe it is unjustified, that they're going to get rid of Joe. I just think that they're going to try to swap him out. They're going to do the Indiana Jones with the golden skull. They're just going to take Sleepy Joe out and swap in Obama, Michelle Obama, or swap in Newsom or somebody else. Hillary was at the White House yesterday, for crying out loud. So I get nervous about that. So if Joe Biden falls too quickly, too hard, maybe there's too much time to swap him out and throw somebody else back in. But they're saying this might actually help bolster Joe Biden, which means that people will rally around him and support him, which might be actually a good thing for the Republicans, because that means that Joe Biden will be the nominee if he looks stronger than he really is. Here is what this statement sounds like from NBC News.
So, Monica, we've reported from both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue how Democrats plan to go on the offensive with this looming impeachment threat. What is the White House doing so far?
Well, they really are saying, hey, we prepared for this. We thought this was likely going to happen. Since earlier this year, they've been getting this war room together that in August really ramped up because they were, again, expecting this as a real possibility. But they're pointing out a lot of these issues that the two of you who do this day in and day out have just spent a lot of time talking about, which is the fact that Speaker McCarthy announced this inquiry without a vote. They're going to try to make a big deal of what they are calling this hypocrisy, given his comments back in 2019 when then Speaker Pelosi did the same thing. And so I think you can expect them to also just continue to have this rapid response effort that's basically this mega list of every Republican who in the last couple of weeks expressed a little bit of doubt and skepticism, some of them privately, but a lot of them now more publicly, saying, I don't know that the evidence is there. I'm not sure where this could go. I'm not sure this is the best use of time. So expect the White House to be consistently pointing that out. And then, of course, they have these lawyers, they have aides and everybody going through this and mounting this response. But overall, they're using a roadmap from 1998 when then President Bill Clinton was impeached. And they like to point out that presidents who were impeached in the last couple of decades actually sometimes saw their poll numbers go up. So they're by no means saying that this is what they would definitely like to see happen, but they're pointing out that there might be a slight political upside here potentially. And they're also underscoring that they would like to see the evidence that these Republicans are talking about, because so far it's not clear that there has been any specifically, and that they would even point to the IRS whistleblower and those under oath who said they couldn't provide any linkage between what Hunter Biden was doing in his business dealings and directly tying that to the president, who was then Vice President Joe Biden. So all of those questions the White House is going to continue to raise. And again, they have their own sort of arm of the White House counsel's office doing this on the daily. You're not going to see the president want to engage on this very much. He's going to try to dismiss it as they try to focus on some of the other agenda items here, Ryan.
She's right about it. I think that they are going to go hard at this. We've got a whole nother segment queued up on this, but Ian Sams, the White House counsel, they are being very proactive. They've already sent out media requests to start attacking the Republicans and so on, and they'll try to leverage this to their advantage. Now, is the advantage enough to overcome the Biden deficit? I mean, I really think that, especially by the time next year comes around, with the trajectory that a lot of the numbers are in the economy, that Biden's numbers may continue to go down so quickly that he'll be justified to boot him out. If the impeachment props him back up, is it enough to close the deficit to put him over the top of Trump? Like, is the country going to say, we're okay with a wrecked economy, a broken border, and insane laws from this country, from this president, but we're still going to vote for him because he's being impeached? I don't think that's going to be the case. So that is what they say. We'll see how it plays out. Here's Jim Jordan in the aftermath. Now, Jim Jordan is on the Judiciary Committee, and he has been tasked with dealing with this. So Kevin McCarthy made the inquiry announcement and then is going to hand it off to 3 different committees: the Oversight Committee, Judiciary Committee, and the Ways and Means Committee. This is Chairman Jordan, who's on Judiciary, reacting.
I think if it comes to a vote, if that's what the Speaker wants, I think we can get the votes, but you don't need that to move forward. There's all kinds of evidence that warrants moving to this phase of our constitutional duty to do oversight of the executive branch. But I think there are 4 key facts, 4 central facts at the heart of this issue. The first is Hunter Biden was put on the Burisma board. Second, he was put on that board with no qualifications. Third, Burisma asked him, can you weigh in with D.C. to relieve the pressure we're under from the prosecution, from the prosecutor here in Ukraine? And fourth, Joe Biden did just that. He leveraged our tax money to get the prosecutor fired. And that fourth fact is validation of what the confidential human source said in the 1023 form. So that is what is central to this case. And then you got all the other facts surrounding it: the emails, the dinners, the phone calls, the meetings, the 5,000 times he used the pseudonym and all that stuff. But those 4 central facts are really what this is about. And that's why the Speaker has said we're moving to this phase of our constitutional duty to do oversight of the executive branch.
But what changes? What more power do you have right now? I'm just reading Andy McCarthy's column, and he says the only thing that changes is the name of the inquiry. You guys were still moving ahead. Do you have more power?
Well, if the Speaker of the House, second in line of the President, says we're in an impeachment inquiry phase, I think it will certainly mean something to courts when we get into the inevitable game that's going to play out here, where we want certain documents, we want certain witnesses to be deposed, and the administration says, no, they're going to drag their feet on that. So when that happens, I think that gives added weight to it. And then if we go to a vote, which we're not precluding from happening at all, the Speaker's not said that. If we go to a vote, I think that it gives even more weight to it. But that's the significance, I think, of what the Speaker announced yesterday.
Mr. Chairman. Okay, so we know that they're going to be battling over subpoenas and documents. Okay, we've played this game here long enough. We're very familiar with reading a lot of their letters. So there will be more letters for impeachment purposes this time, not as a result. You know, every time we read one of the letters at the very end, they say in that final paragraph, just a reminder, government official, we are Congress and we can investigate anything for our legislative oversight functions under House Rule 10 or whatever rule they cite. And that is not going to be the basis for their authority moving forward. Right now, they're going to swap that paragraph out and say, we're not doing legislative function stuff. We're not interested in passing new legislation or whatever. Okay, now it's oversight. Now it's impeachment. So now your justification for rejecting this based on separation of powers or whatever no longer applies, because this this is about impeachment, and that's a different category of separation. So Jordan saying step one is this now declaration of new power, and when the government rejects that, then they may take it to court, and they will use that justification to convince the judge that they are entitled to the documents. But if not, if they still get stonewalled by the courts, they say no problem. We'll turn around, we'll get what we can, and go back to the House for a full impeachment vote if necessary. So the plan is underway. I don't know if it's going to actually help Joe Biden in any real way. I think that might be wishful thinking. I think that as this Pandora's box continues to open, they're going to have a much harder time with this. There's no evidence line. I think this is going to come back to bite them pretty severely, because there's pseudonyms, there's Hunter text messages saying, I'm sitting here with my daddy. There's Hunter texting him saying, or other family members saying, I've been paying for half of Joe Biden's stuff, his family's stuff, for 30 years. The mountains of evidence just continue to emerge. And so we'll continue to cover, my friends. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking this video wherever it is you're watching this, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.